Diana Nips, based in Lisbon, Portugal, and I'm a white cis woman with brown hair, brown eyes, and very tiny, and in a wheelchair. And I'm a dancer, choreographer, and writer, so yeah.
I'll go next. My name's Maria, Maria Oshodi. I'm from the UK, and I am a black woman, biracial, brown skin, brown hair, and kind of like twisty braid things. I'm wearing glasses, though I can't see. They are. Actually, they're protectors for all the overhang from the pavements when I walk past people's gardens. But I got some nice looking ones. I thought they looked cool. And they got zero prescription lenses in the, and I'm wearing a kind of coral kind of t-shirt with a sort of face on it. That's me.
Fabulous, Maria. So my name is Mark Brew. I use him pronouns. I'm originally from Australia. You might pick up on some of that Australian slang in my accent, but I now live in Scotland and based in the UK, where I've lived and worked professionally for the last 20 years. My profession is I'm a choreographer, dancer, and artistic director, and other things as well, I'm sure. My visual description is I'm a tall, slim, white male. I'm a wheelchair user. And I have green eyes, shaven head, and a shaved beard. I'm wearing a flat cap on my head because my head gets cold. And I'm wearing a brown short-sleeved shirt and black top underneath and brown checkered trousers and brown boots. That's Mark Brew. So that's our first question done. Well done, team.
Great job.
We did that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's finished.
Diana, do you want to go for the second one?
So are you sure it's the second one, this?
Well, I don't know what that says. Oh, one.
Okay. Like poker.
Oh.
And what is the most comfortable for you when it comes to meaning and describing your work? Oh. Who wants to start?
This is Mark speaking. I think I always find it hard as a dance artist to talk about my work. I think I'm not the only one. I'm sure we all probably feel that. For me, it's always I want to get people into the room, or I want to get people to experience the work, to feel the work. But then always it's hard to get people in the room. So I always try to, like, whether it is having sort of materials, whether it's written materials or visual materials or soundscapes or some ways of sharing that work. Recently with a new project that I'm developing at the moment, which is a new collaboration with another choreographer, we did 2 weeks R&D, so we videoed that and did sort of voiceovers and interviews on that. So it became like a little documentary. And that has been a useful tool for me to be able to share to people and potential presenters. So I don't need to go, here is what I'm going to do, but actually it's already in a sort of a packaged format a little bit so they can share it. But I'm not great to talk about my work, and if there are presenters in the room or I'm meant to promote it, I find it hard to approach people, but that's sort of my low self-esteem sometimes that comes out.
I think you have very short time also to present most of the times your work and to resume in very short lines, so it makes hard.
Well, I watched you in action today when we got to meet some people. You were very quick at getting your phone out and showing things and talking about it. So how do you manage?
Practice, like, okay, this is my card, and now, okay, this is what I'm doing and what I'm interested in, and the very basic thing I work as a dance practice, and also what I curate and advocate. So it's this kind of main things but then I also have this documentary that documents how I did create the creative process of my last piece. So it's also a 20 minutes documentary, so it's very helpful to understand how I work as a methodology in pieces. But yeah, when you are promoting, I feel like you don't have like a lot of time, so it's like, okay, this is the last one, my piece, and it's 40 seconds teaser that I can show, but yeah, most of my works are in this kind of inner conflict that I live, that is bodies that work as extension of each other, and theaters that are a prosthetic from the bodies. So you never exist alone. It's this kind of complement that everything is bringing feedback. But there is no right answer. It's just you need to be very fast to explain in very short moment what you are doing. And you, Maria?
It's really interesting hearing you both speak, because you know, I get that thing about wanting the work to speak for itself, and also, you know, finding a way of being able to quickly grab the attention and to, you know, give it its best shot in the time that you've got. And I feel I'm really not good at that, really. You know, I think that I have got an inherent thing about just being able to describe something that feels like, often if the work is quite in depth, finding kind of ways to encapsulate it in words often is really tricky. Also, when I'm in conversation with people, I'm never 100% sure whether they're actually I've really got their attention or not, because I can't see them. So I'm like, I always feel like a little bit, I've got this inner dialogue saying, oh, what's going on? Are they really, you know, have you gone too far? You know, what is they really listening? And, you know, and that really, it's like I'm somehow connected with the mothership and I'm not 100% present. So I think it's really interesting what you say, Deanna, because creating something that you can just whip out and go, look at this, you know.
Because it's very hard sometimes, so I really understand what you are both saying. And I really doubt that people in 5 minutes can really understand the main goals of what you are doing, you know. So if I'm talking with a programmer for a Zoom meeting over an hour, that I can have fully time to really go into what I'm doing, it's very different than when you have 12 programmers and you have like 3 minutes of how you catch the attention of this person, and it's, I really doubt that you can fully do that in 3 minutes. So this is just, okay.
And often if you're at a networking event or something and someone says, it introduces you to somebody and you're taken off, like when you know it's somewhere where you're going to present, you kind of can prepare yourself. But if you're at a situation where you're suddenly taken by surprise and they're looking at you and it's like, oh, you know, Maria does this, and I'm like,
do I do this?
Yeah, and I can't, you know, it's like I feel like I'm I feel really difficult to articulate thoroughly, unless I get asked questions. As soon as I start to get asked questions that feel that they are interested or getting some sort of grasp of what it is, then I can open up. But if it's just doing it cold, it's really difficult.
I think that also, that one part of this question was what practices to avoid. And I think that's one to avoid. Just don't throw someone in the deep end and go, here you go, and then you're expected to like all of a sudden know what your elevator pitch is. Yeah. And maybe a good practice is about asking questions, or having something that you can then discuss about your work as an entry point in could be helpful. But one thing for me actually that I wish people would avoid is when I'm talking to somebody as a wheelchair user, majority of the people and presenters I'm talking to about my work are standing up. And I find that really hard because straight away it presents this power dynamic of they're better than I am or more than I am because they're up higher, and they don't come down to be spoken. And then I've got to project my voice and straighten my voice, try to talk about my work.
That you need to be looking up, like it's very uncomfortable.
I think avoid that, trying to be in a position where you both could be sitting down if you're with someone that's sitting down, or, so you could have a conversation.
But in other way, I also have the opposite feeling when someone pull my wheelchair and they almost sit on top of me to be in the same level, and I feel this a bit invasive.
It's a bit too comfortable.
Yeah, it's a bit too much. So then it should have a balance in this kind of not standing, not too close.
I would never let anyone sit on my lap unless I invited them to.
I I must admit, I squat down by the side of somebody's wheelchair so I can talk, you know, and be at the same level. I haven't sat in anybody's, unless I've fallen.
Onto their lap.
Drunk.
Maria.
It's funny. Okay, let's see.
So we have the second one. Maria, would you like me to read that out for you? Okay. Do you remember your first artistic experiences? What was it? Was it a performing arts, or maybe you tried some other artistic activity? So remembering our first artistic experiences.
Well, I'll start. I remember mine was taken by the school, primary school, to the Young Vics to see a show. I can't remember what the show was at all. The only thing I remember about this, and it's interesting actually, because sometimes I think about this when I'm creating sort of our site-specific immersive events, was that we had to walk into the auditorium through the mouth of this dragon, and we had to walk over its tongue to get into the, you know, to get to where the aisle was, to our seats, and through its teeth. And I've never forgotten that feeling of feeling like I was actually inside a dragon and coming, and it was amazing. And that really stuck with me. I think I must be about 7. So that was mine.
I grew up in a very small rural town in Australia called Jerilderie, which has a population of 900 people. So I wasn't really exposed to anything live artistically, really. But I remember probably one of my first things were on TV, actually, like watching, you know, Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly movies and going, wow, they're moving and dancing, and I love that, and I want to do that. So as a young boy in the country, I think that was sort of my first entry point into dance and what dance could be, and then I wanted to be on TV. But you know, I just started, I don't know how it even happened for me, but I just started dancing. And that sort of, yeah, and just was a part of me, I guess. So it just went from there.
Yeah, when I was very young, I started dancing ballet, so it was actually not what I see as a performing arts world now, because it was like this kind of academic, very simple performance for kids. But I grew up with this huge ballet company that was bringing like choreographers from all over the world, Matsek, Cunningham, or whatever, and it was Ballet Gulbenkian. And when I got professional, this already didn't exist anymore. So, but I grew up with this company feeling of what is the performing arts, also very technical and high performance dancers. So, also very perverse, because you could see like the main ballerina having these problems of don't want to eat food, you know, like this kind of how hardcore can be, this kind of world to match this perfect dance technique. So I grew up with that, and yeah.
And then you knew that you wanted to do that, or?
I wanted to be a ballet dancer, but my body didn't match that perfect anatomic body of a ballerina. So I was working very hard to become that. And then when I find the contemporary dance, it was like, okay, it's still not this, because it was Martha Graham and Cunningham. But when I started working with Felix Rouquet and Billy Dorner, and it was when I understood, because they work about bodies in outside venues, and they are kind of sculptorical and also quite acrobatic, as I have this thing of gravity. I don't like gravities. Or I work about falling and going upside down or whatever, but yeah, I have this feeling always.
It's really interesting hearing you both talk about emulation in terms of your practice and being inspired by you know, watching or experiencing something that you then felt almost drawn, you know, because I remember that with figure skating. I grew up in the time of John Curry, who brought balletic movement into, and I was enthralled. And from then on, I wanted to become a figure skater, and I would go and I would have lessons, but that was at the very time that my sight was starting to go. So I would be at the ice rink and I would not be able to, I'd only be able to see people, movements and stuff if I had to got right behind other skaters skating, and I would copy them, but if they got too far away, I wouldn't be able to see them anymore, and it was this whole thing about this desperate need inside of wanting to be where they were, to be, and to somehow that place where they were was like freedom. That's what the freedom was, and if I could just get there, I would be free.
It's interesting in the picture you offer us, for me at least, this picture in the ice.
Yeah, but that's what I found for me was that where through the arts, through dance for me, was that sense of freedom when I was in that place of even just being on my own, dancing in my room, only.
Yeah, but I spent all my teenage years dancing, Janet Jackson or whatever in the room,
Janet Jackson.
And Michael Jackson, and if you see my work now, it's nothing what I were.
Really?
If I would saw my work in that time, I would be like, why are you doing this?
Should we try the next question? Number 3. Oh, here we go. What accessibility practices are most important to you? For open calls, applying for money, rehearsals, shows for audience. So accessibility practices important to you.
So for me, it's very helpful when the fundings have already some quotation for, sign language or audio description, and also for imagine an assistant, or these things. I think they will be very helpful if there is a funding for this, for these things, because it can put budget in a very tough position, because you need to decide if you want to put another interpreter or a performer, or if you are dancing alone, or if you have the devices that can support accessibility or not. So this can compromise the piece very much for me. Yeah, I think that.
What about the other things, like in terms of, what was it, audience?
Audiences and, rehearsals, and also applying, for money or funding.
Yeah, because if I don't have access, if I don't put the sign language, I don't have the deaf community watching the show. So even to rehearsals, if I have an assistant, it can make a huge difference to the way I work or not. And most of the time, I don't have the budget to put an assistant for me, because I need to choose if I'm going to make the performance accessible or if I'm going to make my work more comfortable or.
So you sometimes sacrifice your own comfort?
Most of the time, I need to do that.
Oh, that's interesting.
For me, it's really important to me about accessibility. I feel a huge responsibility, but in a positive way, that it also, I think, strive to do the best that we can. I don't think I'm going to cover everything for everybody in regards to my practice, but definitely doing the best I can within the means that I have. And so through my practice as a creator, when I'm creating work, I do work with audio describers, I do work with the visually impaired blind community. I do then bring in, consultants, whether it's deaf consultants or an ASL interpreter, to look at the work as I'm making it. So as we're devising it, I've got people to help support what ways we can try to incorporate that into the work, and that it's a part of the creative process and actually a means to take it to a more deeper place. So the idea is that the piece, when it's made, will be accessible to as many people as possible. And then you won't need to have these added things into it. It's already going to be there and available. And I do strongly believe that other artists have no excuse but not to do that now, to try to do that. Especially as artists, as creators, we love a challenge. We love to, deepen our process. I think not everyone realizes now, I do because I have a disability, but if you don't have a disability, this is also another creative opportunity to explore furthering your practice.
You're absolutely right. I think that we've found time and time again when we are building access from the start that it begins to be so enmeshed with the aesthetics of the piece that it's actually developing the art itself. It's not just, some weird adjunct that, you have to do for, moral purposes. It's there because it's actually part of the artistic kind of language of the piece. And I think that, we do that as a commitment because we are disabled people in the room. But like you say, I think it is, it's really important that everybody takes this on in some way or other. And sometimes it may, you really have to be honest in the space and make a decision whether, how the access is going to work. And if that does mean you bring in people to consult with and whatever, then do that. Sometimes it might be in a very traditional way, where it is a bolt-on, because that is the only way that the piece can be supported. Or it can be very thinly kind of created around the outskirts, and I don't know what that means, but, it might not be really an obvious big brush stroke in the middle of it all. Or it could be that. You might decide, actually, this could be so enhanced if we bring in a BSL interpreter as an actor or something in this, or whatever it is, So it's and the piece is so much richer, I think, for doing that.
I think we should all use this as a practice, but it depends. If you have, we are speaking about money, so it's just about that most of the time to have these things.
Well, it's about just putting it. Well, I may say just, but one thing that I know is very encouraged here now in the UK, and I'm going to say it out loud, is that you make a budget line for that in regards to what accessibility is for your production, your piece, and budget accordingly to that. So you don't need to take it away from someone's fees or take it away from another part of the production. Yeah,
but the fundings are not very big in Portugal too. You don't have much decision to put everything.
But also the thing is, if you start thinking about it from the very start and it is inbuilt, it's sometimes not an additional cost. The only thing that it may is more, you might need a little bit more time to think that through. But really, if it's part of the thing that you wouldn't think, I've got to, going to include lighting, so that's going to be, that's something that's already there as a given. Your lighting budget is your lighting budget, your sound budget is your sound budget. And it's like...
Yeah, but I don't know how much budget you have for a piece, but our budget is already very short even for us choreographers, so it's a bit complex.
I think this is also where,
But I try to put all the time, with everything that is needed, and then if you don't have, we need to cut somewhere.
Yeah. I do feel like there's also, and I know it's different cultures, but and countries, but it is now the responsibility also of funders and funding opportunities to be educated on this. I'm not saying that you have to do that, but like here now, I know in the UK they are more aware of it, and it is seen in applications for funding. Put in your access lines, but that's come from years and years of lobbying.
Yeah, we are just starting this. It's a bit different, but we are. Like when it's a big venue in Portugal, it's more easy because you don't need to apply. They will support the device already. But if it's very few that do that.
So the question is, just to remind us, what do you think about the development of art related to the cyber zone? Internet, art.
Is that it?
Falling place in the digital sphere. Do you have your own experience of the digital art, cyber world, basically? Sorry. Yes. Yes. And I'm not great, obviously, at reading handwritten. Apologies. So, cyberspace, the internet, digital art. Have you been using it?
Have you? You will not. Yes and no. I mean, we over the lockdown, we strangely actually got a commission to do something before lockdown, which was about digitizing one of our productions and creating an online interactive experience of it. And it was, I've always wanted to do this, and we got this opportunity to do it, and it was really great because it coincided with the first lockdown. So
It's like perfect timing.
exactly, I know. While everyone was struggling, we were there.
You were there
we were
ready to go,
exactly.
launch.
No goodness, it's the only time we've ever got anything right. No, it's a really bad thing to say. But we found a way of working together remotely over Zoom, obviously, and we created this the piece by we sort of basically chopped up the a film of the production and then brought in an animated figure that then took the viewer on this journey through these 4 films, and it was great actually, and it brought our work to a much wider audience, and it's something that's there as a kind of a legacy piece now that can go on forever. It's now appearing in the Dada Fest. It won a category of the Superfest international film. So it's like, wow, this is really cool. But it is like working on another production again. So that's our experience anyway.
Yeah, I found it very different when I started to do it. When the pandemic happened and people wanted online devices, because I'm interested in video dance, but not to make this kind of online performing events. It wasn't just, I work with creating tension and in performers and audience, so it was not working very well for me to do these things, so I didn't. I just work around video dance, and video dance is a thing that really interests me. But this can be a short film or a longer one, but it's also for festivals.
Why does it interest you?
Also because it can raise you very detailed perspectives of things, and it can create this kind of non-stuck areas that you are working, and also because I'm fan of body's extension and the non-gravitational state of the bodies. So it can bring this more detail of my own process of working the physics of the bodies.
I will just share I have done dance for screen or dance for film, which I love. I love that medium. I also, with mine as well, I always ensure that there's also audio-described films of mine too. What happened for me with going into COVID times and then everything being sort of online and having to work every day online, I was managing or artistic director at the time at Access Dance Company. So we moved everything very quickly online. So all of our classes were on Zoom. That I then got tired of it, and I'm sure everyone did. So when it came to, we were able to then eventually come back after 2 years to our first live production, which we did to a limited audience. All had to be separated a certain distance apart and all wearing masks. But what we did do, which was funded and supported by the Joyce in New York City, was we made a film out of it. And that was different because it wasn't just a recording of the live show, but we spent another day separately once the show had finished to actually work with the crew to film it really like up close with all the captioning, with all the audio description as well, that was in the work. And that felt like, I think as you mentioned, Maria, like another production, a different type of production, to get all the angles. And that, that was quite exhausting, but I was proud of it, and actually it's just won an award as well. So, but it was like another big production, like a different production on its own. So, but I think it does provide access to a lot of people, especially, what I said when COVID hit. I'm like, I know this is a horrible thing, but a positive out of this is that finally dance and the arts is now being made more accessible to people at home. So people who may have chronic fatigue or disabled or isolated due to location or their disability or illness, they could then be at home to watch and experience some of this work. So that, I think, was like a silver lining.
I think we need to make an ending.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you and good night.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.